After Jared Kushner failed to disclose his meeting with his brother-in-law, Donald Trump Jr., and at least two people with ties to the Russian government, some Senate Democrats are now calling the White House to review and possibly even revoke Kushner's security clearance. It's the latest in a string of controversies surrounding the president's son-in-law. Now Kushner has hired his own team of high-power attorneys to work for him. CBSNews.com's article, The Impossibility of Being Jared Kushner, takes a look at the role of one of President Trump's top senior advisors. Will Rahn is CBSNews.com's political editor and author of the article. He joins me now from Washington. Will, this isn't the first time that Kushner's ties to Russia have come into question. We've seen so many situations. He came under fire for undisclosed contacts with the Russian ambassador to the U.S. in wanting to set up a secret channel with the Kremlin. So how problematic is all of this for the president's son-in-law right now?
He's in an extremely tough position right now. When you look at it, there's just so much smoke around the situation. Again and again, we have these issues coming up with Kushner and the Russians. First, it was the meeting, the undisclosed meeting with Ambassador Kislyak about setting up a back channel. Then we had his meeting right after that with the head of a sanctioned Russian bank. And then, of course, the latest and most damning revelation, where he at least seemed open to the idea of getting information from the Russian government on Hillary Clinton. That's extremely problematic for where he stands right now. It seems like as this Russia matter continues to unfold, again and again, Jared Kushner is at the heart of it. And for a White House that's exhausted by this story, you got to think that's hurting his role within the White House.
And Will, there were reports that President Trump's outside legal team actually wants to somehow wall off Jared Kushner from discussing the Russia investigation with his father-in-law. How do you think, is there any way of gauging how this is affecting President Trump's relationship with his son-in-law?
Well, I mean, it makes sense from a legal standpoint right now when you think about how Jared Kushner seems to be in far more trouble than his father-in-law, President Trump. All of these scandals, again, they seem to keep on linking back to Jared Kushner in some way. So you could see the reasoning behind creating some sort of distance there. Additionally, when you think about Jared Kushner's advice to the president so far on the Russia matter, the biggest and most significant piece of that was him urging President Trump to fire James Comey. A lot of people in the White House pushed back on that. Jared was a big supporter of it. And sure enough, it blew up in the White House's face. So you can understand for a few reasons why they'd want to keep Jared away from the Russia matter for the time being. In your article, you cite his friends as calling him as the only sane one in the White House. What do you mean by that? So we have to remember where Jared Trump comes from. Jared, and also the faction that he leads within the White House. White Houses always have rivalries and factions, but this one has particularly intense fights going on. You could say that Jared is leader of what you might call the New York faction, people like Gary Cohn, Steve Mnuchin. Jared is a scion of a prominent real estate family in New York. He owned and operated a paper that until the last really couple of years took a center-left to centrist stance on things. He comes from a world that deeply hates Donald Trump. And so when he's going around trying to justify his existence, people in his orbit will like to say that he is a moderating effect on the president, on this White House, that otherwise would come under almost total control by Steve Bannon and the populace. So when you talk about his influence, does he still have significant influence over President Trump? Well, there's certainly an important familial relationship to keep in mind there. His important role, his successful role in guiding President Trump into the White House. However, it does seem like a pitched battle, a bit of a zero-sum game between Steve Bannon and Jared Kushner right now. And given the Russia controversies, Steve Bannon appears to have the upper hand. So do you think that there's a sense that Jared Kushner might leave the White House at some point and go back to New York? That's what people are talking about, people close to the administration. There was an Axios story on that topic the other day. However, that would be extremely problematic for the White House, and I think they know that. As we learned from Watergate, when people start leaving the White House, when they resign to go spend time with their families, like Haldeman, Ehrlichman, things like that, these are situations that don't stem the bleeding so much as exacerbate it. It makes the White House look wounded, like it's trying to hide something. I think there's a lot of pressure right now on Jared Kushner to stay within the White House, including from some people who might otherwise want him out of the way. Speaking of Watergate, Henry Kissinger actually weighed in on Jared Kushner. What did he have to say? It was actually a strange little thing. It caught some attention at the end of last year. Time magazine does its annual Time 100. And usually there's these short essays about the 100 most influential people in the country. And usually they're rather laudatory. Henry Kissinger, however, and Henry Kissinger is a guy who in some ways has a similar background to Jared Kushner in terms of coming from the elite, joining a Republican administration that is loathed in some quarters of the country. Henry Kissinger was surprisingly lukewarm on Kushner, and at the end of it referred to him as Icarus. About 8 months later, it's looking like that is a more and more apt metaphor.
Will Rahn, what do you think is next for Jared Kushner?
Again, I think he's kind of in an impossible situation right now. I think this is a man who has uprooted his life, who has sacrificed a lot in the name of family to help get Donald Trump into the White House. But White Houses are hard. This is difficult work. It takes a toll on anybody. And I can't think of anyone it's taking a greater toll on right now than Jared Kushner.
Will Rahn, CBSNews.com political editor. Thanks for joining us, Will.
Thank you.